Creative Chrissy and Creative Chris. What do they like? What do they not like? How do we teach them? Let's just talk a few minutes about this learning personality. Now, one thing I want to point out to you too as I round up the tips for this fourth and final personality, and that is I want you to remember that there's not really good and bad. I mean, I guess you could call weaknesses bad, but it's just the way we come. It's the way we're wired. So in taking this course, I want you to be sure you focus on the positive points of each of the learning personalities. Because sometimes if we have an opposite teaching style than our child, we can perceive what they have as a weakness. And it's really not. It just rounds us out as a teacher because we need all of these people, like I've explained before. We want all of them. We need all of them in our community. They all bring significant contributions to our everyday life. So we want to embrace the differences, which leads me to talking about Creative Chrissy or Creative Chris. Even though they're a people pleaser, and sometimes we perceive that as a negative, and it can be, it's also a huge positive. Why? Because it's about the relationship. If you have a friend like this, you know what I'm talking about. They are the most warm, caring, compassionate, and did I mention understanding person when you need them? They are so precious. But yes, in the fragility of their feelings can come some awkward moments. They don't really like talking about those feelings either, just like Logical Larry or Logical Lara. They just kind of want you to understand. Now, other personalities aren't as easy to understand as this personality is on picking up when something's quite not right, even though when no one says anything. So just remember, there's a huge positive to being social, and that's what they are. They're social people. And again, I've mentioned there's two types. Sometimes we men think, well, we don't fall in that, our kid doesn't, but there's two types I've learned through the years. There's the introvert and there's the extrovert. The introvert is warm and caring and just a few people in their inner circle. And the extrovert is a party animal. She or he is happy performing right along with energetic Eddie or energetic Ellie. They like the performance stage like energetic Eddie and energetic Ellie. There's two types. So just remember that when you're trying to find out if this is your teaching style or your child's teaching style. Okay, because they are social and it's about the relationships. What they want to read are real books, living books. Living books are written by an author with a passion for a subject. It's opposite a dry textbook. Because they're focused on relationships, they want to read, how did X overcome this? What were his feelings? What was he or she thinking? Because they can put themselves in another person's shoes, so to speak. The way you teach them and draw them out is by things that have to deal with relationships. Or the people, how they interacted with them. Let me give you an example how this would work in action. Let's take a topic. Let's take history. Okay, we have Dependable Dan and Dependable Diane over here who's got to put that date of the Lewis and Clark expedition. They can just rattle right off the top of their head. Wasn't it like 1803? Then you have energetic Eddie over here who's like, dates? What's that? What do we need a date for? And you have Creative Chrissy who's agreeing, nodding her head. Who cares about dates? Who cares about timelines? Now, Logical Lara and Logical Larry say, yeah, we need to put something in order here. But Creative Chrissy would say, I don't remember the date. But what I do remember is that Lewis and Clark took beads, handmade beads, and they took things to trade with the Native Americans. And they had this dog with them, and also they learned about the flora and the fauna, and they came across so many different interesting Native Americans on their trek through the U.S. Let me tell you about how they interacted with those Native Americans. But can you see, as a teacher, we can have all of that, all of those pieces of information from all those different learning personalities is important. It brings our teaching alive and it balances it out, so to speak. Our children get a well-rounded view. But that's a perfect example of what, when you're teaching your kids, how some of them may say, yes, oh, I want to remember that date. And others are like, I want to remember that date and the people. So then you kind of bring those two learning personalities together. Also, what comes into play, don't forget, are the learning modalities, because you have the learning personalities, but some of these personalities are hands-on, some of them are visual, and then some of them, they need to hear. The first was hands-on or body movement. I should probably say body movement. Sometimes it's not so much hands-on as it is all body movement, so they can understand something. And then the second one's the auditory. They want to listen. They want to hear what's going on. They want you to read to them. That's why they don't like when you teach them to read and then all of a sudden their progress sometimes stops, because they used to read with you. Because they're a strong auditory learner. They're still learning as you're reading to them. So the learning modalities come into play with the learning personalities. So if Creative Chrissy is hands-on, you want to use a visual timeline of the people and then put the dates there to help her as well. Okay, she likes art. There's a creative side. That's why it's Creative Chrissy. There's a social side. For example, yes, it could be fine arts, but it's also the chance or the opportunity to express her artistic ability, her natural artistic ability, not her wannabe. Remember, I've shared that in the other personalities. Sometimes we think we're one personality because we want to be, but it's not a wannabe. These are natural, wired settings these people have. Just like logical Larry are natural intellects. They take in a lot of information. Just like dependable Diane is a natural organizer, not wannabe. And just like energetic Eddie or natural performer, and people are drawn to them, and they're quick and they're quick-witted. Same way with Creative Chrissy. She has a natural bent toward art. How could you incorporate that? Well, see, she also likes creative writing. She likes creative writing. There's a lot of the language, like foreign language, linguistics. Sometimes I was telling you that I would have in my classes these moms that would come in and tell me that they taught Spanish, and they have such a beautiful accent. See, whereas dependable Diane or logical Larry or Lara, they could take in the information in, and they could amass a huge vocabulary. But when they talked, you were like, what did they say? I don't understand them. It's the same way like learning music. You have the people that are sight readers, and then you have the people that can just naturally make music. That's the difference between two different types of personalities. And so Creative Chrissy is natural. So in other words, you tell her, okay, I want creative writing, but she just doesn't want to do the creative writing. You have to be equally impressed with the artistic flair she puts on it, because not only does she want to do the writing, she wants to create the drawings and the cover and her journal, and she wants to pour her feelings out in it. So she needs to have time to give her creative or artistic flair to any project. She likes discussions with you. She likes going to co-ops. This child could be draining, or is it the teacher who plans all these activities because they think their child likes it because the teacher is a Creative Chrissy? So now they've committed to every activity because surely we're going to enjoy interacting with all these people. So they want to have a lot going on, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that if you have time and it's the way they learn. But along with that, they also have to learn balance And when I mean balance, I mean there's other children in the family. What are their needs? How do they learn? So it can be exhausting to teach this child because of how many things they want to be involved in. They like nature. They like poetry. I need to tell you this. In doing the co-op, one of my dear friends is a creative Chrissy. I mean intelligent and creative. And out of the three of us on the board of directors, we all knew our learning personalities and our strengths, and we stayed in our lane, and it made a beautiful co-op that we had. And she was the one that was creative, and we're thought, okay, we want to teach the kids about Shakespeare. But some of us didn't have Shakespeare in high school where it was really fun, right? We kind of found it boring to understand some of it, but not them. But she brings it alive. We were at a co-op, and she had everyone go full costume during the medieval Renaissance times. She made a balcony, and they acted out Romeo and Juliet. It was the most beautiful introduction to the bard, if you will. And so they have a way of making learning fun. They have a way of things that are naturally boring, have them come alive. So if you're a teacher, trust your gut. You have a pulse on your child's learning. You, out of all the teachers, you struggle less with making something fun. The others will struggle a little more with making something fun. You don't. You have a natural creative bent to do that, and so does your child. So follow them when they want to do that. Okay, foreign language, like I explained. Now here's some things to watch out for. Okay, we have creative Chrissy, and she loves to write. And I have one son who this is his second learning personality, and he would write and write and write and write. And I remember on a forum, I would hear these other moms, my kid hates to write. And I would think, I don't have that problem with my kid. He will stop writing. But what I realized is that I had to hone his writing because they're scattered. They're unorganized. To them, everything's important. So unlike logical Lara teacher or dependable Diane teacher, this creative Chrissy don't know how to hone things down because everything's important. So logical Larry, logical Lara, and dependable Diane would have just a little bit leg up on that. But I needed to be able to help this one son of mine to bring his story to an end, that we can't just go on and on and on because he was enjoying his story. So sometimes we have to help them to be more precise, more logical because they don't want to be, more precise, hone the idea, get to the point. Sometimes we have to help them do that. Just remember that they do like being with other people. Also, they struggle with math. Language arts is what they're good at. Arts, creativity, poetry, the things they do struggle with. They don't particularly like math. When you come to teach science with them, it's the same focus. Not so much the process as it is enjoying how did this scientist overcome, how did they make a breakthrough on this disease. If you'll focus on those things, then it helps this creative Chrissy and this creative Chris where they may struggle.